Okay, Brother Julius, will you read the commandments, please, from Exodus, the 20th chapter, verses 1 through 17.
And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which I brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's.
Now let's go into Ecclesiastes, the 12th chapter, read verses 13 and 14.
Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil.
Now let's go to Revelation, the 22nd chapter, verses 14 and 15.
Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. For without are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and idolaters and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie.
But sisters and brothers, these commandments should be read in every church, because nowadays when I look on YouTube, I see some things that are really, really horrifying to me. I see ministers in the whole churches playing music and dancing, and they even going to Temptations and Michael Jackson and all that. Then I see preachers on the internet also out there upholding homosexuality. I see preachers out there straight up saying teaching the word of using the Bible to say that you're supposed to get money. I mean, this thing is so bad, sisters and brothers. And the reason it's so bad is because nobody is reading the Bible and nobody is teaching God's commandments. Nobody. But if they was teaching the word, they wouldn't have time for all this foolishness. Because, sisters and brothers, this thing is coming down on us. That's why the Lord calls me to put together this lesson that's titled World History Told by the Prophets. World History Told by the Prophets. We're going to show you, sisters and brothers, that the prophets have called this thing down through the generation and how that the Lord already have brought this thing to an end by his word. But being that nobody's paying no attention, nobody's aware of it. But this thing is almost over. And man is going to have to pay for all of this foolishness. And it look like the closer it get, the more folly goes on. Because I ain't going to lie to you, sisters and brothers, the people should be embarrassed when they go to church. Because all you got is foolishness in there. Money, dancing. Everything that's contrary to God's commandment. There's nothing wrong with dancing, sisters and brothers, but it's not supposed to be dealt with in the church. When you go to church, you're supposed to learn what thus said the Lord.
Yes, sir.
Now, we're going to start this world history told by the prophets in Daniel's the 2nd chapter, because we're going to do a lot of history here, sisters and brothers. We're going to show you how that the prophets called it and man performed it. That let me know that God have brought this thing to an end. Like I say, he have called the end from the beginning. We're going to start in Daniel, the 2nd chapter and verse 1. Daniel 2 and 1. Okay, go ahead.
And in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him.
Now this Nebuchadnezzar, he's the first man to rule the entire world. He's a Gentile, but he is the first to rule the entire world, and the Lord had him dream. Skip down to verse 5 and read it. Well, just keep reading. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Verse 2, then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king.
Go ahead.
And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell thy servant the dream, and we will show the interpretation.
See, not only did he not remember the dream, he couldn't even he not only didn't he know the interpretation of the dream, he couldn't even remember the dream that he had. So all these guys that's supposed to be wise in his administration should show us the dream. Now Nebuchadnezzar knew that these guys was faking. Go ahead and read.
Verse 5, the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If you would not make known unto me the dream, and with the interpretation thereof, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill.
Now, why would the king make such an extreme threat, a promise? It's because these guys apparently had put him in the mindset that they knew everything. So now, he said, except you make known this thing to me and tell me what it means, I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to make your houses a dunghill. Skip down to verse 10 and go ahead.
The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter.
That's very presumptuous of him, wasn't it? There's not a man on earth. Just because you don't know something don't mean that somebody else don't know it.
Teach.
So now, but go ahead.
Therefore, there is no king, lord, nor ruler that acts in such things as any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requires.
Go ahead.
And there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh.
Now, he's right, except God, not the God, except God. But God had always have somebody that he can inform or he have informed about what he is doing. So now, he's being presumptuous again. Go ahead and read.
For this cause, the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon.
And so he says to kill them all. We're going to kill all the wise men in Babylon. Go ahead and read.
And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain.
Now look, Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was not called when the king wanted to know the problem, what his dream was. It's always like that. You have all the fakers, they got all the notoriety. And so when the government or anybody else of renown wants to know something concerning the Lord or anything that might be happening, they call all these fakers, all of the dancers, and all of the money grubbers. And when they get there, they don't have an answer. So now, he sought Daniel and his companions to kill them, not for information. Skip down to verse 16. Verse 16 and go ahead.
Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time and that he would show the king the interpretation.
So now, when they came to Daniel to kill him, he said, wait a minute, why is the king's word so hasty? Let me go ahead and talk to the king. He went in there and said, look, give me a little time, king, and I will tell you your dream and whatever else, and the interpretation of it. And he gave him that time. So skip down to verse 31. Verse 31. And go ahead.
Thou, O king, sawest and behold a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible.
So he told him this great image, this is a great statue. Keep reading.
This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass,
Go ahead.
his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and break them to pieces.
Now he saw this great big old image. And he saw as a throne cut out without hand, smote this image on the feet, sisters and brothers. And this throne that was cut out without hand is Jesus. But go ahead and read.
35. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together and became like the shaft of the summer threshing floors.
Go ahead.
And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth.
So this stone that smote this image, he took down the whole statue, sisters and brothers. Why did this stone hit the image on the feet? Because this is talking about governments we're going to show you down through the generation. And by the time this stone, which represents Jesus, come on the scene, you're only going to have the 10 toes that's left on the statue of this great image. So, and when this stone hit this image, it didn't bounce and go back to heaven. This stone grew and filled the entire earth. It didn't go back. Go ahead and read. What verse?
Verse 36. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king.
He said, now I done told you what the dream is. Now I'm going to tell you what the message is. This is the interpretation. Go ahead and read.
Thou, O king, art king of kings.
Go ahead.
For the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory.
Go ahead.
And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowl of the heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold.
So you are this head of gold, because the Lord have made you ruler of the whole earth. So you are the king. You are kings of kings, sisters and brothers. He says, so wherever men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the air,
yes,
he have given them into your hand. He was the world ruler, not just the ruler of Babylon. He ruled everything on the planet.
That is right.
According to the word of God. Go ahead and read.
And after thee shall rise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth.
And now after you, another kingdom that's going to be inferior. But then a third one that's going to be they're going to be inferior to you, but still they bear rule over all the earth.
Yes, sir.
That means that they rule it too, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and read.
And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron. For as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise.
And the fourth kingdom, it's going to be a strong kingdom, but it's going to do something. It's just going to break in pieces, and it's going to rule the entire earth. Now, these are 4 kingdoms that the Lord have named, sisters and brothers. Now I want the brothers to put this statue up there with the name so we can show you what we're talking about. This statue here, the head is Babylon. That is the first kingdom ruled by Nebuchadnezzar. Then the next one, that's inferior, is Medo-Persia. It also ruled the whole earth. That was the that was the silver. Then you come down to the other one, was Greece, that come up after the Medo-Persian. So Greece ruled the whole nation, and the nation that come up after Greece, sisters and brothers, is Rome. They rule the whole world. These are the only 4 kingdoms that have ruled the entire world, and nobody has done it since without any kind of rivals or any kind of challenge. So now, Daniel's talk about these. So this is the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, sisters and brothers. He saw, he is the Babylon. Then after him, Medo-Persia. After him, Greece, and after him, Rome. And Rome was supposed to rise and fall 10 times, sisters and brothers. So now let's go into Daniel's, the 7th chapter, and we're going to break these kingdoms down in their time, and we are going to verify them that it happened with history. Daniel's chapter 7. Daniel's chapter 7, and we're going to take our time and take them one at a time, sisters and brothers.
Yes, sir.
We're going to let the Lord, let the prophets call it, and we're going to show the fulfillment in history. Now, Daniel 7 and verse 1. Daniel 7 and 1. Okay, go ahead.
In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed.
Now, this Belshazzar, some call him his, Nebuchadnezzar's son or grandson. Either way it go, he came out of Nebuchadnezzar,
yes,
and he was still king of Babylon. So now, he had him threw a big party. Go ahead and read.
Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea.
Now this is, I'm sorry, this is Belshazzar. I forgot that this is in the time of Nebuchadnezzar's thing. That's when Daniel's had the dream. Not in the time of Babylon, in the time of Belshazzar. That's when Daniel's had a dream, and he told the matter of it. Go ahead, and what's this dream? Go ahead.
Verse 3. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it.
Well, that's the Babylonian Empire, sister and brother, because the Lord worked on Nebuchadnezzar. So this is the Babylonian Empire,
yes,
that we're talking about. What verse was that?
That was the end of verse 4.
Go ahead and read.
And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear. And it raised up itself on one side.
Go ahead.
And it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh.
Now that was the Medo-Persian Empire, sisters and brothers. Now what we're going to do, we're going to show you, the Medo-Persians did not take down Babylon by force, according to the Bible. The Medes, the first ones that ruled the Medo-Persian Empire, was the Medes. Who are the Medes nowadays? Those are the people that's called Russian. So now, the Medes did not take the kingdom by force. The Medes inherited the kingdom.
Yes, sir.
Let me go and show you this now. Let's go into Daniel's the 5th chapter. Daniel's the 5th chapter. And we're going to start reading at verse 1. Daniel's 5 and 1. That we can still dealing with this same son, Belshazzar, which is Nebuchadnezzar's grandson or either son. Either way it go, like I said, he came out of Nebuchadnezzar. Go ahead, 5 and 1. Go ahead.
Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000.
Go ahead.
Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine and commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein.
So now he having his party. But then he got beside himself. Now he going to go and get the holy vessels that his father, Nebuchadnezzar, had taken when he took down Judah and destroyed the temple. That's where he made his mistake. He should have left it alone. Look who he served. Go ahead and read.
Verse 3, then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, And the king and his princes, his wives, and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver.
That sounds like this money grubbing preacher. This
That is
nowadays,
right.
ain't it?
That's right.
All material. Ain't got nothing to do with the Lord God whose breath is in their hand. In whose hand their breath is in, sisters and brothers. All this, what they serve the God of, silver, gold and silver. Go ahead and read.
They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone.
All materialistic stuff.
Yes.
Go ahead and read.
In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand.
Go ahead.
And wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote.
All of a sudden, the hand just come out of clear, poof. And I bet the Lord started on one side of the room and let it go across to get their attention.
Yes, sir.
And he wrote over against the plaster, wrote on the plaster of the wall. Go ahead and read.
Verse 6. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against another.
I mean, this king was scared. When you're so scared that your knees are knocking, you're scared. God got his attention. Go ahead and read.
The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom.
Now, he called the same people that his father called, and they still had the same problem. They couldn't interpret it.
Right.
It's all that simple. All the notarized fakes that's supposed to be about something, about God and about everything else, when the gauntlet is thrown down, when it is needful to reveal what must be done to hide from the trouble to come, they don't have a clue. So what happened was, he had to end up going to the same place. Skip down to verse 17. Verse 17 and go ahead.
Then Daniel answered and said before the king, let thy gifts be to thyself.
So they called Daniel again, didn't they?
Yes, sir.
This time they didn't go to kill him, but this king's mother told him there's a guy in this kingdom in who the Spirit of God dwells. So when your father needed somebody, he called him. So why don't you call this guy, one of the captains of Judah?
Right.
And so he called him. So then Daniel answered and said before the king, go ahead.
Let thy gifts be to thyself and give thy reward to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king and make known to him the interpretation.
He said, now let your gift be to another. Don't worry about it. I ain't coming in for pay. True preachers don't preach for pay.
Make
now,
it plain.
The Bible tell you that you can't live out the ministry as if it's needful. I just thank God I'm not one of them. So I can focus on the getting salvation instead of getting money that I'm going to get old, die, and leave.
Teach, Brother Bowie.
So now, he said, so keep whatever you want, but I'm going to tell you what you want. Skip down to verse 17, because the man of God is always going to tell you what you have to have.
Let's read that.
Verse 25, brother. Verse 25. Skip down to verse 25 and go ahead.
And this is the writing that was written. Mene, tekel, upharsin.
Go ahead.
This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God has numbered thy kingdom and finished it.
He said, so this is the interpretation of it is. He quoted what was written, and now he's going to break it down. He said, meaning God have numbered your kingdom and finished it. Go ahead.
Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and are found wanting.
You have been weighed in the balance, and you have come up short. Go ahead and read.
Peres, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians.
And thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Maybe he would have lived a little longer had he not got departed and forgot about the whole and not used the holy vessels of the temple. But the Lord sent that finger, and that finger wrote the message, and the message told him, look here. To God, the number of your kingdom and finish it. And he put you in the balance, and you found wanting. So your kingdom have been given to the Medes and the Persians. How long was it going to take them for them to inherit that kingdom? Let's see. Skip down to verse 30. Verse 30 and go ahead.
In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain.
In what?
In that night.
In that very night.
Yes, sir.
That he got the message. God's killed him. Go ahead and read.
And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old.
And so Darius, the Medes, that's why it's called the Medo-Persian Empire. Darius the Mede took the kingdom. So he inherited the kingdom. He didn't have no resurrection. But the rest of it, sisters and brothers, the kingdom changed hand by war. So Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon ended up in the hands of the Medo-Persian by inheritance because Darius was a Mede. But now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the last king that Israel ever had, which was the king of Judah. And from there, we're going to go from Babylon to Persia. Let's pass the Medes to Persia. So let's pick this thing up and show you how this thing happened. Let's go into 2 Chronicles, the 36th chapter. Because the Medes and the Medo-Persian Empire succeeded the Babylonian Empire through inheritance, not through war. You have some history books, they catch the war part, but being that they didn't read the Bible, they didn't know how the inheritance took place. 2 Chronicles chapter 36. We're going to pick this up at the last king that Judah ever had, because Nebuchadnezzar is the one that took down the last kingdom we ever had, and that was the kingdom of Judah. 2 Corinthians 36, 2 Corinthians chapter 36. And we're going to start reading at verse 11. This is the last king we ever had, sisters and brothers, and he was set up by the Babylonian king, and he rebelled, so the Lord took him down. Verse 11, go ahead and read.
Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 11 years in Jerusalem.
Now, he was 21 years old when Nebuchadnezzar made him king, and he ruled 11 years in Jerusalem. Go ahead and read.
And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord his God.
And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. Go ahead and read.
And humbled not himself before Jeremiah the prophet, speaking from the mouth of the Lord.
And didn't humble himself from the mouth to Jeremiah the prophet. When Jeremiah brought him the message from the Lord, because the Lord was telling him, you better stop doing this. And the prophet was telling him, Jeremiah didn't listen to himself. Didn't listen to him. He didn't humble at all. Go ahead and read.
And he also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him swear by God. But he stiffened his neck and hardened his heart from turning unto the Lord God of Israel.
And even that when Nebuchadnezzar made him king, Nebuchadnezzar made him swear by his God that he would obey him and wouldn't rebel against him. In fact, in other lessons, we will show you that God is the one that broke up this truce between Nebuchadnezzar and Zedekiah. Because he wanted Israel to have some kind of representative of nation that the people could say, there is the land of Israel. But what he did, he rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar, just like he rebelled against God. Skip down to verse 17 and go ahead.
Therefore he brought upon them the king of the Chaldees, who slew their young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary.
So therefore he brought who the Chaldees, these still the Babylonians. The Lord brought them up on them. And he killed their young men in the sanctuary. Go ahead and read.
And had no compassion upon young man or maiden,
go ahead,
old man, or him that stooped for age. He gave them all into his hand.
Look, Nebuchadnezzar had no mercy, because the Lord sent him in there to take care of the business. Go ahead and read.
And all the vessels of the house of God, great and small, and the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king and of his princes, all these he brought to Babylon.
So those are part of the cups that he brought there, part of the holy thing that his son, Belshazzar, drank out of, sisters and brothers, that got him killed that very day. So he took them and took them to Babylon. Go ahead and read.
And they burnt the house of God and break down the wall of Jerusalem and burnt all the palaces thereof with fire and destroyed all the goodly vessels thereof. And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia.
Now, so he destroyed Jerusalem, burnt the temple, tore down the walls, and the ones that he didn't kill, he took them all into captivity, and they was there until the reign of the Persian sisters and brothers. Remember, the Medians is who inherited the kingdom, but the Medo-Persian became a single empire. It was called the Medo-Persian Empire. So when Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's son or grandson, whatever he might be, when he was killed, Darius the Mede took it over, and he ruled until the time of the Persian Empire. And that's where we're going to look at. We're going to go from Babylon to Persia. Now we're going to read some history. Let's go into World Scope Encyclopedia, Volume 2, because Bible said that the Persian Empire took over from the Babylonian Empire. Okay, read the script, history.
Babylon, the name of an ancient country of the lower Euphrates. The region occupied by it is now called Iraq. Nebuchadnezzar was its greatest king. He reigned from 604 to 561 BC. Reconquered lost provinces, rebuilt canals, erected palaces and temples, constructed great aqueducts, lighthouses, and made Babylon the capital, once more the greatest city of the nations. He conquered Jerusalem, carried the king and a large portion of his subjects into captivity, and later destroyed the Jewish capital.
Now, we just read that, didn't we? Go ahead.
After the death of this mighty king, the empire survived but 24 years, when Nabonidus and Belshazzar were conquered by Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, in 538.
Now, that was the historical era. Cyrus conquered it from the Medians, but the Medians inherited. But still, we came into things. Cyrus the Great, didn't we? Because the Lord said you're going to be in captivity to Cyrus the Great. Now, let's go into Ezra, the first chapter, and let's see what this Cyrus did. Ezra chapter 1. Now, this is biblical in history. So the history that lets you know that the Medo-Persian took over from the Babylonian sisters and brothers. The Medo-Persian took over from the Babylonians. Now, and Israel was in captivity until the time of the Persian, because history just told you that Cyrus the Great is the one that ended up with the empire in his hand. So we're going to pick this up at Ezra, the first chapter, and verse 1. Ezra 1 and verse 1. Go ahead and read.
Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and put it also in writing.
Now, he said, now this Cyrus, this is the one that history just spoke about. He made a proclamation and put it all in writing. Go ahead and read.
Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah.
Now, see this Cyrus. Let you know that God move on anybody he wants.
That is right.
God had already told you in Isaiah, the 44th chapter, that he's going to bring Cyrus into the picture.
Yes.
So now he got Cyrus making his bid. He wanted the temple built, another temple built. So Cyrus said the Lord had put it in his mind to build this temple. The Lord of Israel. What verse was it?
That was the end of verse 2.
Go ahead.
Who is there among you of all his people? His God be with him. And let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Lord God of Israel. He is the God, which is in Jerusalem.
So this same Cyrus that history was talking about, he gave a proclamation for the Jews to go back and rebuild Judah. Skip down to verse 5. Let's see who went. Verse 5. Go ahead and read.
Then rose up the chief of the fathers of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites.
Now, why is that the elders of fathers of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi? Because that was the ones that was left after the Lord had the Assyrians take out the 9 tribes.
Yes.
The only one was left was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. And they've been together even to this day, sisters and brothers. Like when people say, ask you, who are you? I say, I'm a Hebrew Israelite. Well, what tribe you come out of? I say, I either came out of Judah, Benjamin, or Levi.
Right.
Because we're the ones that were scattered among the Gentiles. And the Gentiles are white folks, sisters and brothers, called European, contrary to whatever anybody else might think. Because the Lord set the precedence in the 10th chapter of Genesis.
Yes, sir.
So the elders got up, finished that verse.
With all them whose spirit God had raised to go up to build the house of the Lord, which is in Jerusalem.
Now he put it on to go build the house of the Lord, which is in Jerusalem. Now go to Ezra, the 2nd chapter, and read verse 1. Ezra 2 and verse 1. Go ahead and read.
Now these are the children of the province that went up out of the captivity of those which had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away unto Babylon, and came again unto Jerusalem and Judah, every one unto his city.
He said, now these are the people that went. So he named all of these, so everyone to his city. He named all of these Jews and the lineages and everything, because they still had a record who they was. Everyone to his city. But let's see how many that he let go, that went when Cyrus gave the proclamation. Let's skip down to verse 64. Let's look at the total number. We're not going to read all of that. I'd have you here for 2 days. Verse 64. Okay, read it.
The whole congregation together.
The whole congregation together
was 40,002,303 score.
So now, they said when Cyrus let them go, he said it was 42,360 people.
Yes, sir.
Now they had better records than the Persians, but this is recorded in the Persian record, sisters and brothers. Let's go into Grolier Encyclopedia, Volume 3. Grolier Encyclopedia, Volume 3. Okay, read it, Antoine. Cyrus the Great.
Ascended the throne of Anshan in 559. Cyrus in 550 overthrew the Median king Astyages in battle.
See, that lets you know that the Medes was before the Persians. Go ahead and read.
Assumed the throne of Media and established the capital at Ecbatana. He then ruled Assyria, northern Mesopotamia, Syria, Armenia, and Cappadocia. In 547, he conquered Lydia from Croesus and subdued the Greek cities of the Asia Minor coast. As king of the universe, Cyrus proclaimed peace for all.
Ain't that something? God had given the whole world, so he proclaimed himself king of the universe. Cyrus declared peace for all. Go ahead.
In 537, he permitted 40,000 captive Jews to return to Palestine.
Well, he went for 2,300 off, right. But the thing about it is, this is recorded history. This happened. Like you have a preacher on YouTube running around, call himself a doctor, trying to show him something that the Bible said that came to pass in history. I could show you a whole lot if you bother to look. This is recorded history.
Yes.
We read in Ezra that Cyrus did it, and we read in history that Cyrus did it. The same amount, sisters and brothers. Maybe Israel records a little more specific, but it's the same amount at the same time. So that lets you know that the Medes and the Persians came up after Babylon. Now, who came after the Persian, Medo-Persian Empire? The Greek Empire, sisters and brothers. So let's go and have a look at that. Let's go back to Daniel, the 7th chapter. We're going to take it a piece at a time. Go back to Daniel, the 7th chapter. Because we're not going to, we're going to take it so you will get this in your mind. Because we are showing you how the Lord called the world history by the mouth of his prophets. And it's failed just like the Lord called.
Yes, sir.
Daniel's the 7th chapter. Daniel's the 7th chapter. You might put your marker there because we're going to be in and out of this 7th chapter. Okay? And we're going to read one verse, verse 6. Daniel 7 and verse 6. Okay, go ahead.
After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl.
Go ahead.
The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it.
Now, what rose up? This is a leopard with 4 heads, had 4 wings, and dominion was given unto it. This is the Greek Empire, sisters and brothers, because the Greeks are the ones that knocked off the Medo-Persian Empire. They're the ones that knocked off, at that time, the name Darius had become a title instead of name. Because you had Darius the first, because the Darius was the Median ruler, the first one that ruled after Babylon. Then you got the Persian, but still now these guys are Persian here, but the whole thing is they started to use the name, the Median name Darius. But still this was the Persian Empire. So now, let's go into World Scope Encyclopedia, Volume 4, and we're going to see who knocked off the Medo-Persian Empire. See if the Bible called it right. Go ahead and read.
Darius III, surnamed Codomanus, the 12th and the last king of Persia. He was a great-grandson of Darius II. His reign began in 336 BC and ended with his death. At the time he ascended the throne, his kingdom was greatly disturbed by the tyranny and luxury of his predecessors and was soon overwhelmed by the advancing opposition of the Macedonians. His army was defeated on the banks of the Chronicles in Asia Minor. Soon after, he organized an army of 400,000 to intercept the advance of Alexander the Great in the mountains of Cilicia, but was defeated a second time in the battle near the Isis. When his family fell into the hands of Alexander, he collected another army and met the Macedonians, but was again defeated. Shortly after, Alexander captured Susa, the capital, and made all Persia subject to Greece. Darius was slain as the result of a conspiracy, and with his death, the Persian Empire came to a close. His daughter, Statira, became a wife of Alexander.
So now, the Greeks knocked off the Persian Empire by the hand of his first king, Alexander the Great, sisters and brothers, just like the Bible called it. Now, the Greeks are ruling in their time. Now, what comes after the Greek? The Romans. But before we go to the Romans, Daniel told you about this great battle, because it looked like they had a whole lot of battles, didn't it?
Yeah.
Daniel's told you about this great battle between the Medo-Persian Empire and the Greek Empire. Let's go to Daniel's the 8th chapter, and we're going to look at this great battle. Daniel saw it, and he wrote it down. Because this was a long battle, eventually Alexander the Great won it, and the Greeks ruled. Daniel's 8 and 1. Daniel's 8 and 1. Okay, go ahead.
In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam.
Now, so Daniel saw this, saw the Greeks knocking off the Medes, the Persian sisters and brothers, before it ever took place. Daniel had this dream under Nebuchadnezzar's son. So he had seen this thing way down in the future. So he said, when he saw it, he was by the vision, he was by the river Uli. Go ahead and read.
And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Uli. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns.
Go ahead.
And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other. And the higher came up last.
See, these 2 horns represent the Medes and the Persians.
Teach.
So the one was higher than the other that came up last, that's the Persian Empire. Because everybody talks about the Persian Empire, but nobody talks about the Median Empire. So the one horn, the highest horn, came up last. Go ahead and read.
I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him.
Go ahead.
Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will and became great.
Now, he's so great. Under Cyrus, he called himself the king of the universe.
Yeah.
Nobody could handle it. God had given him this whole world, and he said so. So nobody could stand before him. In his time, go ahead and read.
Verse 5, and as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes.
So here come an he-goat. He comes so quick, looked like he never touched the ground, like he was flying. He had a notable horn between his eyes, this he-goat. Go ahead and read.
And he came to the ram that had two horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power.
Go ahead.
And I saw him come closer to the ram, and he would move with choler against him, and smote the ram, and break his two horns.
So this he-goat attacked the ram, and he broke his two horns. Go ahead and read.
And there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him to the ground and stamped upon him. And there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand.
Now this goat represented Alexander the Great. And when he jumped the Greek Empire, there was nobody that could deliver the Greek Empire out of the hands of Alexander the Great. Go ahead and read.
Therefore the he-goat waxed very great. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven.
We're going to show you that this notable horn, which was represented Alexander the Great. So when he took care to knock off the Medo-Persian, and he was in control, and when he was strong, he had everything under his control, the horn was broken off. Skip down to verse 15. Verse 15 and go ahead.
And it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning. Then, behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man.
Now Daniel saw what this goat had did to this ram. So Daniel sought the meaning. So I see this goat attacking this ram.
Right.
I see this goat knocking this ram down and breaking his horn. But I see this goat, when he was in the zenith of his power, his horn was broke. So I wanted the meaning. So what happened? The Lord sent him an angel to give him, to tell him what he had just seen. What verse?
We're at verse 16.
Go ahead.
And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Uli, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision.
Because Gabriel is the messenger of God, sisters and brothers. Gabriel is the spirit of truth. In all generations, he bring the message. He told Zechariah John the Baptist, Daddy. He said, I'm Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God.
Yes.
So he heard a voice of Gabriel, make this man to understand the truth. Go ahead and read.
So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision.
He said, I want you to understand. Remember now, Daniel was still under the Babylonian Empire. So I want you to understand at the time of the end is the vision. Skip down to verse 20. Verse 20. And he's going to start telling what was going on. Go ahead and read.
The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia.
So that ram represents the kings of the Medians and the Persians. Go ahead and read.
And the rough goat is the king of Greece.
And the rough goat is the king of Greece.
And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king.
So he's in a great horn that's between that goat's eyes is the first king. Alexander the Great is the first king of Greece. His father, Philip the Barbarian, was the king of Macedonia. And when they assassinated his father, they plotted, they killed him, Greeks killed him, he killed them, Alexander the Great killed them, and he united the whole Greek Empire. He was the first king. Go ahead and read. What verse are we?
That was the end of verse 17.
Go ahead. Skip down to verse 20 now and go ahead.
I'm sorry, that was the end of verse 20.
Verse 20.
Yes.
Start at verse 21. Go ahead.
And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king.
Alexander the Great. Go ahead.
Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power.
Now, four kings stood up. Because when the horn was broke, four kings stood up in the nation and took over the nation. But they all wasn't as powerful as Alexander the Great because there were four of them. Go ahead and read.
And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to a full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up.
Now, but we're going to deal with the four kings first, sisters and brothers. Now, let's go and look at this. Let's see what, so when the horn, that first horn was broken, which means that Alexander the Great died, and four generals took over the Greek Empire. Let's go into Grolier Encyclopedia, volume 5, and page 76. Grolier Encyclopedia, volume 5, page 76. Okay, read it.
Alexander the Great reigned from 356 to 323 BC. Before his death, 13 years later, Alexander made an impact on world history and men's imaginations rarely equaled before or since. But on the brink of further expeditions, Alexander died suddenly in 323 BC.
Now, and he was still young. Was he about 33 years old?
33.
Go ahead.
Shock, disbelief, and confusion followed Alexander's death. The political history of the next 2 centuries is a complex web of alliances, intrigues, and wars among his various successors, the Diadochi, and their heirs and rivals. A revolt of nearly all mainland Greece was suppressed by Antipater, the Macedonian governor, and the instigators, including Demosthenes, were sentenced to death. Ptolemy, the governor of Egypt, kept control there. Before the end of the century, Cassander had established himself as king in Macedonia, Seleucus in Syria, and Lysimachus in Western and Central Asia Minor. The more remote eastern areas failed to recognize Greek rule almost from the first.
Now, who took it over? These 4 generals. Let's go into Grolier Encyclopedia, chapter 2, page 496.
You want me to read
Did you finish that?
I got one little part.
Well, read it. Go ahead.
Antigonus Gonatas founded the Antigonoid kingdom in Macedonia and played a decisive role in Greek affairs from 287 to 239 BC.
Now, Grolier, volume 2, page 496. Go ahead.
Cassander, Macedonian general, son of Antipater. After Alexander's death, Cassander seized Macedonia in 316, killing Alexander's mother, Olympias, that year in 311, murdering Alexander's widow and heir. He assumed the title king in 306 to prevent Antigonus from reuniting the empire. Cassander joined Ptolemy, Lysimachus, and Seleucus in war against Antigonus, defeating him at Ipsus in 301.
So now, you got Cassandra, Ptolemy, Seleucus, and Lysimachus. They took over the empire. You know this guy Ptolemy, he took over Egypt. That was his domain. And his daughter was Cleopatra. And I have a whole lot of black people talking about Cleopatra was black. Cleopatra was not black. Cleopatra was a Greek, sisters and brothers.
Teach.
And now, after his daughter, then the other women that ruled Egypt, they adopted the name of Cleopatra. So you had Greeks ruling Egypt from the time of Alexander because he had knocked Alexander off. So now, when he died, his 4 generals took over: Cassandra, Ptolemy, Seleucus, and Lysimachus. These were the 4 heads on the lepers. They also was represented by the 4 horns on the head of that goat that came up when the first horn was broke off. In other words, his generals took over and divided the kingdom in 4 places, in 4 divisions. Let's go into Daniel, the 9th chapter now. Daniel's the 9th chapter. 11th chapter, I'm sorry. Daniel's the 11th chapter. Daniel's the 11th chapter, and we're going to start reading at verse 1. Daniel's the 11th chapter and verse 1. Now we've gotten down to where the Greek Empire that knocked off the Medo-Persian Empire, which inherited the Babylonian Empire. So we've gotten to 3 of them, haven't we? So let's see now. Now the Greek Empire, we did the inner workings of it. What happened inside the administration once Alexander the Great had died. Now, Daniel's 11th chapter, and start reading at verse 1. Go ahead and read.
Also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him.
Now, Daniel's lived through all of this stuff.
Yeah,
he
he did.
confirmed it. Go ahead and read.
And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all.
Go ahead.
And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece.
And now that's what brought Greece against them.
Yes.
This guy stirred up everybody, the Medo-Persian, against Greek, and what happened? Go ahead.
And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion, and do according to his will.
Now this mighty king gonna stand up. This mighty king, sisters and brothers, is Alexander the Great.
Yes.
He knocked off Darius the Third. History tells us that, but go ahead and read.
And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven.
That's why I said when Alexander the Great died young, and his 4 generals took it over. That's why I said his kingdom is gonna fall, and his kingdom is gonna be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. Go ahead and read.
And not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion,
Not
which he
according
ruled.
to his strength. Go ahead and read.
For his kingdom shall be plucked up even for others beside those.
So, and somebody else gonna come and pluck up his kingdom. Somebody else. Who is that? Others that's gonna come? The one that come from the west of his kingdom. See, because remember, Babylon ruled it all. Medo-Persia ruled it all. Greece ruled it all. But now, when Alexander the Great died, his 4 generals took over, and they divided the world up in 4 divisions. Now, out of the western division came Rome, because that is the next one that is to take over, sisters and brothers. So let's go back to Daniel's the 2nd chapter and pick up this 4th beast. Back to Daniel's the 7th chapter, and we're going to read one verse, verse 7. Daniel 7 and verse 7. Okay, go ahead.
After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly.
This is the Roman Empire. Dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. Go ahead and read.
And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns.
Now this Roman beast was different from all the rest of the beasts. The rest of them ruled you physically. But Romans come in, not only did they destroy you physically, they destroyed you mentally, because out of Rome came all of this false religion, sisters and brothers. That's why it was different than the rest of it. Now let's go and show you that Rome took over after the Greek Empire. Let's go into World Scope, Volume 5, Encyclopedia, Volume 5. World Scope, Encyclopedia, Volume 5. Because when Rome came, he had 10 horns. That means that Rome wasn't going to go away like the rest of it. He's going to fall, and he's going to come back 10 times, sisters and brothers. And we're looking at the 10th resurrection in Western Europe. But all of these preachers that's money grubbing and dancing don't even see that. Therefore, this thing will come up on you like a thief in the night. So now, let's go into World Scope, Volume 5. Go ahead and read.
Greece attained its height of prosperity and military power under Alexander the Great. Alexander defeated Darius III, overthrew the Persian Empire, annexed large parts of Asia and Africa, and among other cities, founded Alexandria.
Now, Alexander overthrew what empire?
The Medo-Persian.
The Medo-Persian Empire. Keep reading.
The brief reign of Alexander was followed by internal dissensions and rivalries among the city-states, which formed alliances or leagues in favor of or hostile to Macedonian supremacy. In 279 BC, an invasion of the Gauls occurred. The nation was then threatened by the states that rose in the west. And after the capture of Corinth in 146 BC, all of Greece became a Roman province.
Now, that's when Rome took over. All of Greece. Did you finish that?
Under Roman rule, a period of peace and prosperity prevailed, but Greek political power was eclipsed.
So now, let's show you that Rome took over from Greece, just like the prophets called it, sisters and brothers. But then here come the religious part of Rome, which is called the little horn. He showed up in the Roman Empire. He wasn't around in the Babylonian Empire. He wasn't around in the Medo-Persian Empire. Neither was he around in the Greek Empire. And he wasn't around in the beginning of the Roman Empire.
Teach.
But after the fall of the last Roman emperor, all of a sudden the little horn showed up. This is a religious horn. Now let's go back to the 7th chapter of Daniel, and we're going to read one verse and show him rising up. Daniel 7 and verse 8. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 8. Okay, read it.
I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn.
See, them horns that he considered was the 10 horns on the head of that Roman beast. So he considered the horns, and what rose up among them was a little horn. Go ahead and read.
Before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things.
Now this is a religious horn, sisters and brothers. So this horn rose up, and he plucked up 3 horns from before him. Why is it these 3 horns was plucked up? Because they was Germanic tribes, sisters and brothers. They was Germanic tribes. That was the Grolier, the Ostrogoths, the Vandals. Let me see. The Grolier, the Ostrogoths, the Vandals. Who was the other one?
That was it?
No, that's 3 horns. I'm thinking 4. So now these guys was Germanic tribes, and they always was mingling in and out and being affiliated with Rome. But they didn't go along with the little horn.
Right.
So the little horn had them plucked up by the root. Now let's go into Italian people, the pictorial history of the Italian people. We're going to read verse 63. Pictorial history of the Italian people, verse 63. This is a history book. Go ahead and read.
Page 63.
Page 63.
Barbarian rulers. After 455, what central government remained in Italy was for 80 years in the hands of leaders of German mercenary troops or of Germanic tribes that settled in the country and lived exploiting the docile, servile Christian Roman population.
Now, the Pope got Christianity and he made the people docile. They wouldn't even fight. So it was easy for these Germanic tribes to exploit them. Go ahead.
The Vandal Gesseric remained in Italy only a short time. The Suevian Ricimer appointed and dismissed emperors of the empire in the west for 16 years. Another general, Orestes, possibly a Roman and not a barbarian, nominated his teenage son, Romulus Augustus, emperor in 475.
That was the last emperor, Romulus Augustus. Go ahead and read.
And the following year, Odessa, leader of a motley collection of mercenaries, mainly Herulaeans, deposed Romulus Augustus, nicknamed Augustulus, after having defeated and killed Orestes. The year 476 is generally accepted as marking the end of the Roman state in Italy. Odessa governed Italy nominally as representative of the Roman emperor in the east. In reality, he acted as an independent ruler and inefficiently. In 488, the Ostrogoths, authorized since around 450 by the government in Constantinople to settle on the right bank of the middle Danube, were led into Italy by their leader, King Theodoric II. Besieged in Ravenna, Odessa surrendered and was assassinated in 493. The Herulaeans were never heard of again.
So Odessa was the leader of the Herulaeans. So these Ostrogoths, they was representing the Roman Empire at that time. And what he did, he came on and they knocked off this guy. Because really, they was really pushing the docile Christians. Go ahead and read.
Justinian. In 535, the Roman emperor in the east, the able Justinian, bent on reestablishing the unity of the empire, sent an expeditionary force to Italy. In his eyes, as in the eyes of all native Italians, Italy was still very much an integral part of the Roman state. Surprised initially by the attack, the Goths soon rallied behind their leaders. While most Italians looked on, and a ferocious war was fought for nearly 2 decades between the armies of the Gothic kings and those of the legitimate ruler, the emperor. Finally defeated, the Ostrogoths disappeared from the pages of history.
Now that's two. Hurlies was defeated. Nobody have seen the nation of Hurli anymore. Ostrogoths defeated. Nobody have seen the nation of the Ostrogoths anymore.
Right.
That was all of them. So that's two that's plucked up by the root.